Okay, I think we're live. So thanks everyone for tuning in today again. Today we're going to be talking about having a financial guide during a financial crisis. So we just sort of want to start by acknowledging that a lot of us are experiencing maybe the financial impacts of this crisis in a very different way. Some of us have had our businesses shut down overnight. We've had layoffs immediately. There's some people where that's been a reality already for a few weeks. And there's others of us who feel like our work routine, other than working remotely and working from home now, we don't feel like there's any sort of threats there for our, job security, and therefore no major financial impacts. But we want to look at today basically a situation as, if someone is facing maybe a layoff or unemployment, and there's the potential of having, financial impacts during this time, is how do we go about preparing for those? So for some people who this hasn't become a reality yet, we do want to always, Liz, we were talking before we got started about staying positive. You don't want to always think about the worst case scenario, but sort of some of the strengths to realizing what that reality could be if the situation does go on for a long time, and just having some of the tools in place to help make the best decisions we can and have a really solid financial plan, and be aware of what some of the things we might be taking advantage of might mean for us, and the implications of those things. So to get started today, I want to introduce Liz Schieck to you. She is a certified financial planner, and she is with the New School of Finance, which is an amazing member that we have in one of our Queen West locations. Liz is a part of that team. So she's going to be sharing some of the amazing information that they've put together. I think she'll also be able to direct you to their site where they have more of these resources available. So Liz, I'll let you take it over, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit more about what you do and your background.
Great. Yeah. So I work for the New School of Finance, and what we do is we are an advice-only financial planning firm, which means that we don't actually sell investments or lend money or sell insurance or anything like that. We just give advice. And so we're totally unbiased. And right now, especially, I think it's very helpful to get, I think it's always helpful to get advice that is just in your best interest. So that's what we try to do. And we have online courses. Online courses. Ooh, there's a big echo there. We have online courses which are on sale right now. And we have, we do one-on-one meetings, which is our big kind of thing that we do. And so, today I just wanted to kind of talk about a few different things, and I'm open to, if people have questions, talk about some of the government support that's in place, and talk about how to prepare if you aren't in any financial sticky spot yet, but also if you are, what are the best ways to kind of deal with that? Yeah.
Okay, no, that's awesome. So maybe a good way to sort of start looking at this is some people have already dealt with maybe a layoff, or some people are maybe worried that might be coming.
Yeah.
So, the great thing is that it doesn't mean you're totally alone in the situation. There are some government benefits and programs. Also, obviously there's the I, but there's some additional benefits available. So Liz, do you maybe want to sort of explain to us what some of those benefits are and how people can have access to them?
Absolutely. And if it's okay, I might share my screen so that I can show some stuff as well. Okay. Share. Okay, so there's a couple of things. The two main benefits that we're kind of seeing people most, kind of one or the other usually affects most people right now. And the big one is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the CERB. And that's the one that if you have your income or your employment has basically dropped down to zero, you can receive $2,000 a month for 4 months. There are some criticisms of it, which we'll talk about, but what's really great about it, I think, is that it's available for both people who are self-employed and employees. So normally people who are self-employed, which I know a lot of members at Workplace One are, are not eligible for regular EI benefits. So those people would have been totally left out in the cold if we were just operating through normal EI. And also normal EI is based on, you get 55% of your taxable income up to a certain amount. And typically the maximum is about $2,000 a month, but there are lots of people, retail workers, restaurant workers, who 55% of their wages would have come in at a lot less than $2,000 a month. And that's quite hard to live on, in Toronto especially. So it's a flat rate. It's not based on income. The only rules basically are you have to be 15 years or older. You have to live in Canada. You have to be without income because of something related to coronavirus. And you will be paid every 4 weeks. You have to have earned $5,000 in the last 12 months. That's the only income requirement. So you have to basically have been employed in some way over the last year. So basically applications opened this week. So they're trying to stagger it by birth month. I have a little slide for that. So if you were born July, August, or September, today's your first day to apply. And then it's just going to keep going on this rotating schedule here that you see on my slide. Basically, the application is super, super easy. It's a simple, basically, attestation that you're out of work for this reason. The really key thing about CERB is that your income has to have gone down all the way to zero. So for the first time that you apply, you have to have 14 consecutive days within the 4-week period where you have zero income. And you have to have the expectation that you're not going to earn any income moving forward as well. And so, but after that first period, you have to have no income at all for the full 4-week period. So it's a little tricky. This is one of the main kind of criticisms of the CERB so far, is that for people who are self-employed, where their business has probably really come down dramatically, but maybe not gone down all the way to zero. They might have a few clients still paying them, or maybe be doing a few smaller retail sales depending on their work. Technically, they don't qualify for CERB right now. And we're hearing from a lot of people who are thinking, geez, it sounds like it'd be better if I just shut down my business so that I can collect this $2,000 rather than earning $500 this month, maybe from working a little bit. Obviously, I think that that's not the intention of the plan. Part of this is to kind of keep the economy going and keep businesses thriving and surviving. There was an announcement this week that they've acknowledged that they've been hearing this concern and they're working on it. So I'm really, really hopeful that within the next few days, this has all been evolving extremely quickly, that we will hear a little bit more about how people whose income has reduced dramatically or their workload has reduced dramatically, but not down to zero, can qualify for some of these benefits. We're not sure what that will look like, but it is coming, which is really, really, really good news. So stay tuned for that. And I will we have as we mentioned, we have a blog post that we're updating every day as new info comes out. So we'll get that shared with everyone somehow after this, because that way you can keep an eye on what the changes are. So that's the one thing. And this is the benefit for you if your income has totally gone away right now. The other benefit available is, I have it on here, is the wage subsidy. Here we go. And so this is if you're an employee, but your company is basically laying you off or furloughing you, kind of thing. Like maybe you're not technically laid off, but there's no work. So I keep thinking about, restaurant workers, for example, where they're maybe technically not laid off, but they are not getting shifts. So this is something that your company, your employer would apply for, not you as an individual. So they apply for it, and the government will literally give your employer 75% of your wages up to $58,700. So it works out to, I believe, $847 a week. And the employers collect that and basically pass it right over to you as the employee. So the idea is that the government is subsidizing your employer so that they don't need to lay you off, so that they can keep you on payroll, keep you as an employee. If they are able to top up your income to the full 100%, they're encouraged to do so. But the idea is that if your business qualifies, they can apply for this and you can get at least $847 a week, or up to 75% of your income if it's less than 58,700. There are some kind of caveats here. You have to prove that you have a decrease in revenue. The business has to prove that. And so if you have employees, this is something to look into, whether you fit, whether this is applicable to you, whether you could qualify. And if you are an employee, and you haven't had a conversation yet with your employer, or if you're worried that your work might change, this is something that if they might not know about it or they don't know about it, that they should be looking into for sure. Those are the two main benefits right now. And the thing to know is that if you have applied for EI, if you were laid off kind of the second week of March kind of thing, you don't need to apply for the CERB. You're going to be automatically considered if you became eligible after March 15th. They're just going to roll your EI application into the CERB. This one, like I said, it's your employer who will qualify. So you don't have to do anything for that one if it's the wage subsidy that you would be getting. Unless you are the employer, then you want to look into applying for it.
So is it like basically you're either eligible, you would either be a part of a company that would be applying to this program, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, and that would be sort of your access to government benefits if you're technically still staying employed. And the other kind of, sort of thing you might be a part of then is if you have been laid off or you have lost your job or you are self-employed, then you're kind of looking at the other benefits. So it's either sort of taking advantage of the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, or doing it more independently because of the layoff and using EI and the CERB benefits.
That's right. Yeah. So it's one or the other. And you cannot be the recipient of a CERB and be getting the wage subsidy. And the wage subsidy in particular, they've been extremely adamant, the government has been, that right now, because the applications are going to be so plentiful, there's going to be sort of an honor system happening for the time being, where they can't dive into everybody's financials, every company that applies. But they have said with no uncertain terms that if you are abusing this, if you don't have a decrease in revenue, or if you're trying to kind of pull fast one by using the wage subsidy program, that it will come back. They will be looking into this when the dust has settled on all of this, when life kind of goes back to normal, and that there will be significant consequences for anybody who's kind of sneaking into the wage subsidy or like abusing it in any way. So that one, if you're a company, definitely make sure that your books are in order and that everything looks good. You have to show a 30% revenue decrease from the same month last year. And this is something that's also a little bit tricky. There's going to be some exceptions made potentially for startups. If it was your first year of business last year, you might not hopefully be seeing revenue that's 30% less than it was in your first month or something like that. Or if you had a major event last year. So there might be some flexibility on this. They've indicated that there might be, but it's probably going to be case by case basis. And you would want to talk to someone about whether you're eligible. If you're unsure, get on the phone with them. But yeah, you can't do both. It's CERB or wage subsidy.
Cool. Okay, that's great. So now that we kind of know, I guess, a little bit about the benefits if we have faced a layoff, or we are self-employed, or if our company's taken a really large hit that either we own or we're working for. I guess another good thing to look at now is obviously people are going to have to sort of be reviewing their expenses.
Yes.
And saying, okay, now is not the time where maybe, we're, it's not just a time to, keep maybe spending the way that we would normally spend. And even if we have maybe, I think there's a lot of things out there that we're trying to really support local small businesses where we can, and keep up our typical buying habits with those companies and support, I know with restaurants, a lot of people are offering like delivery and takeout now. And I think I think we should really support those people. But there's also some of us that if we're transitioning into moving into these benefits, obviously we're not going to be able to sort of, continue with the same purchasing habits that we did before. So we're obviously in a position where we're having to sort of tailor down our budgets so
Yes.
that they can fit within those benefits we're going to be living off of.
Yes.
So for some of us, we can, cut out sort of maybe luxury things that we were
Yeah.
used to for non-essentials. And, we can make it on a month-to-month basis with what we
Mm-hmm.
have. Either we can easily survive off of 75% of our income,
Mm-hmm.
or we can pay our bills and make do with EI.
Yeah.
So let's look at, though, for some people who are going to be in the position where they can't do that.
Yes.
There's sort of some different situations. So your team's broken it down really well. So some of us are going to have to start dipping in to our savings.
Mm-hmm.
So your team's done a really good job of sort of laying it out in the way that some of us have savings that we can access, that they're in accounts that we can get access to.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us do have savings, but they're all tied up.
Yes.
So either it's the equity in our home is our only savings,
Mm-hmm.
or it's other investments that they're tied up into.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the reality that some people don't have any savings. They
Totally.
rent, we're paying our bills on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah.
And outside of that, we don't really have a safety net. So can you maybe walk us through,
Absolutely.
I guess, those scenarios? So if we do have money saved, what to do if the money is saved, but it's invested or it's kind of tied up?
Yeah.
And what to do if we don't have access to savings?
Totally. Okay, so the first thing that everyone should do is do what we call sort of a financial assessment. So we need to know how much you might be short, right? So take a look at everything that's coming in, into whether it's regular income, whether it's the CERB or wage subsidy, whether it's there are going to be some increases to some government benefits like the GST, HST tax credit, and the Canada Child benefit. So if you have kids, those monthly benefits that you might be receiving from the government are meant to increase in May. And so take a look at all of that money that's coming in from all those different sources for every kind of earner in your household. And then take a look at your expenses. What can be cut? What can we not cut, right? So for example, here we go. I would say first looking at your bills, are there any that can be reduced temporarily? And be realistic, right? So for example, my little slide here, like it's probably not worth it at a time when you're stuck at home a lot, all the time, to say cancel Netflix for that, $10 to $17 a month or whatever, like that's probably worth it. But finding out whether you can suspend your gym membership payment, or if you do have kids in daycare, I know I have some clients where they absolutely don't have to pay that right now, and others where they're still being asked to pay. And so, but looking into what, if any, bills do you have that we can reduce temporarily. So we're trying to bring your spending needs down as much as possible. And then also looking at any help that you could get from your financial institution. So if you have any debt, whether it's a car loan or credit card debt, or student loans from the government have already been put there's a moratorium on them for 6 months, so you don't have to pay that right now. But talking to your bank about a car loan, line of credit, or credit cards, and your mortgage, if you do have property, talking to your bank about mortgage and whether it's right for you. Most of what we've seen is that these are mortgage deferrals. The interest is still going to accrue. Sometimes it's actually a loan with interest on top of the mortgage interest. So it really, I think the mortgage deferrals or any potential mortgage help from your bank is really only worth doing if you really need it, because it could end up being an issue later on or costing you a lot more in the long run. So if you're still working and you have no change to income, I wouldn't recommend taking advantage of this, because it's not as maybe good as it seems. But if you do have a reduction in income and need that help, absolutely get on the phone to your mortgage lender or to your banks or to your lenders, all that stuff. And then really what we need to figure out is how much more are all of your expenses, groceries, bills, all that stuff that you're going to be spending right now, is that higher than what's coming in? And if it is, we need to figure out exactly what that number is. So let's say it's $500 a month. We're short $500 a month. How do we come up with that? So kind of the order of operations is, if you have cash savings of any kind, in, even in your checking account, I know sometimes people keep a surplus in there to waive their bank fees, keep $4,000 in your checking, and then you don't have to pay $15.95 a month or something like that. That's money that you can pull upon. The worst case scenario is you'll pay that bank fee for a couple of months. And I would also talk to your bank about, can they waive that for you during these times? So cash first. Don't feel badly about dipping into cash savings or into your emergency fund. This is literally what it's for. And then going to, if you have a TFSA that's got cash or GICs in it, accessing that next. And if it is a GIC that's supposed to be not redeemable, that's like locked in for a set period of time, which I know sometimes folks have, again, I would say, see if you can get on the phone with your bank and whether they will make an exception to opening that up. Just a tip about talking to your bank about any of this stuff, whether it's loans or anything like that. My understanding, this is anecdotal, but is that you have to say, I need help because of COVID-19, because I'm impacted by coronavirus. If you don't say that it's because of COVID-19, they can't enact their kind of policies and they can't prompt you. So if you just call them and say, I need some help, can you open up my GIC, but you don't mention that it's because of this crisis, you might not get the answers that we're looking for. So be really clear about why you're asking for help. So then looking at, if we don't have cash savings, if you need to pull upon debt, generally speaking, what we want to do is look at the lowest interest rate debt first. That's what we would go to first. So if you own a home and you have equity in your house, find it, if you can access a home equity, home secured line of credit, they're usually very low interest. And if you have a mortgage with one of the main banks and they offer a home equity line of credit, but you don't have one right now, again, get on the phone with them and find out if they can get you access to some of that equity. Personal line of credit next, a low interest credit card. We're basically trying to limit the amount of debt and the amount of high interest debt that you might take on during this period of time. If you have investments, I think that a lot of the questions we're getting are, should I be selling my investments? Is that better than taking on debt? Everybody's different. So a lot of investments right now, the market is down because of this crisis. And so if you sell your investments now, you're going to crystallize those losses. So we want to be very careful about doing that. So my kind of 2 cents is, if you use cash first, but if we're deciding like investments versus taking on debt, thinking about the timeline to pay back the debt, how much are we going to have to borrow? Would it be a lot and it would take a long time to pay it back? Or would it be a couple $100 you anticipate being able to pay it back very quickly? Ideally, if you can pay something back within 6 months of when things go back to normal, if that's sort of your projected timeline, then I think it's probably better to take on low interest debt before selling investments. But if you need to, or if you think it's better for you to withdraw from investments, only take what's needed. So this is why that first part of doing the assessment is so important. If you determine that you need $500 a month, that's your shortfall. Obviously, we don't know exactly how long this might all go on, but figure out a time. If you want to take out 3 months or 2 months or something like that, take out just what you need, 3 months times $500. We don't want to sell everything and permanently lose all of that investment, like crystallize that investment loss. Avoid taking out of your RSP unless it's truly, truly, truly the only option, because you're going to both crystallize investment losses and pay taxes on any RSP withdrawals. And really, like, what we want to do here is what we like to call a controlled burn. So accessing only what you need, and then put it, once you've figured out that money that you need, put it in a savings account, and then literally top yourself up, kind of like you're topping up your salary. So if you're short $500 a month, put $500, move it from that savings account to your checking account each month. It's really easy to get into the feeling of like it's a kind of spiral. Spending is also such a coping mechanism for a lot of people. to spend some money on things that make us feel nice and make us feel human in this time where it's really hard to feel normal. And so really getting that realistic plan and figuring out how much you need, and then creating that controlled burn so that we don't end up with more debt or blowing through more savings than what is kind of absolutely necessary. Yeah.
All right.
I think there's a question. How do I see those?
Yep. So I pulled it up, and we already addressed it actually.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
You had talked about the question is, do you have any information regarding a boost to the child benefit due to COVID-19?
Yeah. So there is a great calculator that we link, that's someone else's calculator. It's Preet Banerjee's calculator in our blog. Basically what they've said, what we know so far is, I believe it will take effect in May. They're increasing the maximum for each child by $300. But the child benefit is already kind of geared to income. And so it might not be that you get $300 more. So there is a good little calculator online that is in our blog post, which we can share somehow with everyone. And I would plug things in there, but if you're getting it now, you can expect it to increase. It's just a question of how much exactly. And I believe that will come automatically. No application needed on your May payment.
Okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm. And also file your taxes if you can. Like if you haven't already, the deadline is extended. If you owe money, if you're self-employed or you're going to owe for some other reason, you don't have to pay your taxes until September. As of right now, they've delayed the payment deadline, but it's a good idea to get them done in case you actually qualify for more things than, like if you're, otherwise they're going to base it on the previous year. Like for example, if you qualify for the GST, HST credit, if you didn't qualify in 2018, but for some reason you're going to qualify from 2019, they don't know that until you do your taxes. So it's a good idea to get filed if you can get those done, or have your accountant get them done, because in case that it opens up any potential other things. And I also think that for self-employed people, I know doing the taxes can be stressful about, how much am I going to owe in taxes? Is it more than what I've already maybe paid in installments or more than I've saved? And very often you don't really have that like firm answer until you do the filing. And I think that as much as it's kind of scary and sometimes we want to stick our heads in the sand, under these circumstances, it would be really helpful to know how much you do owe so that you can look at, hey, maybe you saved more, maybe you oversaved for your taxes and there's more available there. And not only do you not have to pay it till September, but you actually have more than you need and could use that as like an emergency buffer right now. So I think it's worth filing and getting those hard numbers and having the information so that you can proceed with like eyes open.
Yeah, I think that's really a lot of what, everything you're talking about is really speaking to is, delaying looking into the process or delaying having a plan. I know when people get, scared or things are uncertain, maybe looking at what a situation like this could be for you personally seems really scary.
It's so scary.
But when you actually do it, I think a lot of times some people are maybe surprised at some of the resources that are available to them. And once you break down your budget, you might see how easy it is to kind of save an extra few $100s a month, or and just having a plan is really what helps people manage with stress and all the other things that are going on right now so much better. Like this might not have an impact on your financial situation.
Totally.
Your company might still operate as, and you're just working remotely, and those are the challenges you're dealing with. But yeah, having a bit of a plan really, really helps people make the best informed decisions. So,
and I can say,
yeah,
like, even from before this crisis, just in my regular work where I'm meeting with people, a lot of times when people come in to meet with us to make a financial plan, it's the first time they've ever sat down with someone, and it's extremely common for people to say kind of that they've avoided it. I like to say sometimes that we're sort of like the dentist, like people are like, I know I should go, but they don't want to, or they kind of dread it. And I think that every single time, there is never a meeting, I mean, maybe a very small percentage, but like pretty much always, even if the plan is like going to take a little longer than what they were hoping for, even if it's not like the best, it's, you know, we can't always create magic, or like find a magic secret sauce. But every single time people are like, oh, I'm so glad that I know now, because when you don't know about kind of how long it's going to take to pay back some debt, or how long it's going to take for you to save enough money to buy property or something like that, it's just this like specter of stress, that is really like nebulous and looms over people all the time. And that information is so powerful to know, like, here's where I stand, here's where I'm going to be in this amount of time, and like I know how to get there and I know what to do. It causes so much peace of, like, it results in so much peace of mind to like have some kind of plan.
Yeah, no, that's great. And your website, the New School of Finance website, has a lot of this really amazing information just there that everyone can look at, which is so awesome. You guys are such a great team, and you provide like so much stuff for people. It's really great. So yeah, people can go and check that out, and
Yeah,
it kind of lists like a lot of the options. Like if people need help with this and help navigating through this, your team is around, and
we're here, we're working.
yeah, you have lots of different packages available, and it's I think, yeah, the amount of information and the help you can give to people who are worried about the uncertainty, it's really worth um, kind of the small cost of getting the really valuable information, because it can really
Yeah.
help save you a lot more money in the long run, and really equip you with the best information to make the best choices.
Yeah, and we're also doing, for, because of coronavirus, normally like for people who are existing clients, they can access us for small questions kind of anytime, like they just need to hop on a call for 15-20 minutes. But we usually don't make that available to people who are not existing clients, but we're doing these kind of special, we're calling them like power calls, where people, even if they're not a client, can get on the phone with us for half an hour and like crunch through any sort of pressing, urgent, how do I get through this crisis? If you need some support with that, like, just reach out, we're happy to help. And I know that, I think one of the challenges that I personally am feeling is figuring out what I'm spending right now. You know, it's not normal life right now. I'm not shopping for groceries the way I normally would. There's a lot, and I think that there's a lot of tricky stuff around money, because there's everything with coronavirus. I feel like there's, it's like competing interests, you know, stay home as much as possible, but support small businesses, only go to the, and so, you know, when I think about the places where I would normally buy some of my groceries, I might go to my fish place, I might go to the bakery, and it feels harder to do some of that right now because you're supposed to limit outings. And I think there's a lot of emotional conflict about how do I shop, what's the best thing to do, trying not to rely too much on delivery, but also trying not to go out too much. And like, it's very challenging. And I think that we're all just starting to maybe get into a bit of a groove of figuring it out. I think the first 2 weeks, everyone was sort of in shock, and in operating through like a weird fog. And I know for myself, I'm just starting to figure out like, oh yeah, am I spending now on groceries when I'm never leaving my house, or like, and so, you know, what your budget might be normally, when in kind of like the normal life world, might not be the same as now, but it might not be less either. It might just be you're spending in different ways. So it's worth taking a look at it and figuring out like, what do I need right now and how is that going to work?
Yeah, no, that's great. Those are, yeah, it's definitely a really emotional finances, and the fear of what you could be dealing with, especially when things are just so uncertain. And you've mentioned so many times how things are constantly like, every day it's a new update and you don't know what's going to happen. It becomes a really emotional process. So yeah, being able to kind of try and step outside that a bit and just look at the facts and all the information and the details can be a really powerful thing that can
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of emotional benefits as well. It's
And
just
like
providing.
being gentle with yourself, you know, like none of us are perfect. This is a really extremely strange situation that, and we don't know when it's going to end. And I think that's what's very hard for a lot of people is oh yeah, I can do this for this long, but after this long, I don't know. And we just simply don't really know how long we're going to be in this current state. And the more uncertainty there is, the harder it is to make a plan. Absolutely. But we can still do our best. That's all any of us can do, is do our best to kind of put in some structure and put in some strategies.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Liz, that's great. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
yeah, coming on with us today and sharing this awesome information. And yeah, you'll be able to find all of this out on their website. And if you need any additional help or resources, you can go there. So yeah, thanks again. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.